Hello, everyone. Welcome to Intelligent Enterprise Storytellers. My name is Rob Shannon. I'm the managing director and founder of the Intelligent Enterprise Leaders Alliance. It's my absolute pleasure today to welcome Harshal Mehta to the program. Harshal is the vice president and chief information security officer at CWT. Harshal, welcome to Storytellers.
Thank you, Rob. It's been a pleasure out here.
Before we jump in, and there's a lot to cover today, we're so excited. I was hoping you could tell our viewers a little bit about CWT to give them a sense as to the size and scope of the organization that you're currently working for.
Absolutely. So many of you don't know CWT is a corporate travel management organization headquartered here in Minnesota. We are a $1 billion organization, close to 15,000 employees. We operate in 100 countries and we manage, I would say, the second most volume for corporate travel across the entire world. So it's a significant organization.
Very impressive indeed. Well, like I said, there's a lot to cover today. And I first wanted to jump in and talk a little bit about the strategic vision of your role and roles like that other people may have that are watching here today. And the first question that I have for you is the role of the CISO has evolved quite a bit, particularly as the markets have become more dynamic, going from a role of really being a technology enabler as a primary focus to that of a strategic business enabler focusing on ultimate outcomes. And I was hoping you can talk a little bit about how that shift in your role at CWT has gone and how you've adapted to actually becoming an enabler of business strategy.
Yeah, it's something which is so close to my heart because, whenever we think a role, a stature of a CISO, we always think CISO is part of a technology organization driving all technology changes, but that has changed drastically on two aspects. The first aspect is, just rightly you mentioned, we are the business enablers. Um, a lot of the times, I hear in a conversation where you go to the security team, you go to the CISO, the first answer you're gonna here is no, we cannot do it. How do we change that perception? How do we enable the business to go faster and broader, specifically in this digital era where digital adoption, market focus, and customer competitiveness is so crucial for winning more customers and business? So that's my role in the organization is I, you know, I keep on joking on this with my technology folks is, I don't talk to them. I talk to the business. I talk to the legal folks. I talk outside the technology on bringing the value proposition to enable them to win more business and make security more as a value proposition. So that's one. Second is with everything happening with the new SEC requirement, with everything happening on no more incidents standing with just security or technology organization, but a pure conversation with investors, the stakeholders. It's a primary topic for our board and our investors, and they want to take the topic outside, the technology rooms to the board and the investors. I think that's where the role of CISO has changed so much. Is I've been called into every audit committee meeting, and they are interested on two aspects. One is, Harshal, tell me what's the risk, and tell me how are we doing, and what do you need to make sure we are protected and secured with all these sophisticated threats we are seeing. So that's a big drastic change from the vision and the leadership perspective where they see CISO on the same table as the CIO and the other executives.
Well, you couldn't be more right. I mean, our research has found a lot of the same things, and we're going to talk about artificial intelligence and how that's impacted the organization at large. But first, and you sort of referred to this, was talking about cybersecurity resilience and the culture of cybersecurity awareness. And I know a lot of folks that are tuned in today are struggling with those same issues about cascading that cybersecurity awareness culture throughout the organization. You and I have spoken a little bit about this before, and I know you have a lot of great things to say about the work that you've done at CWT in this regard. Would you mind sharing some of those concepts with our viewers today?
Absolutely. I've been in this role for close to 6 years now. When I picked up this role, the biggest, I would say, the challenge for me as a leader was how do we enable the organization to have cybersecurity in their DNA? It's difficult, It's a classic example where, our end users would do a mandatory annual awareness training and they're done. They move on with it. to now where we have a behavioral based awareness program where I know which are the people who are always missing out on phishing emails, to who are the employees who always are the culprits on clicking on malicious emails. So that has changed drastically with the focus on enabling and having everyone wear the security hat. And let me explain you that. My role in the organization is to go to every organizational business units and talk about security. Now, security for technology group is different compared to security for a legal organization or for business groups. How do we have those conversation with those leaders, which they can understand and digest it, rather than enforcing um, a very standard approach for the entire organization? So to enable that, the first visionary thing we did is have security champions. Security champions across each business units who would wear the security hat and in turn help me and my organization to adopt and evolve and push the security practices within the departments. So they would be like a security champion who would be learning from us and wearing that metal and passing it on in their language. That made a huge difference because now rather than we and my 60 people responsible for security, it's the entire organization who's wearing the hat of security. And that also flows from a leadership perspective, starting from a CEO and my CIO, who is like, this is not a security job, this is everyone's job. And it's a very common sense where a single person clicking on a phishing email can take the entire organization down, speaks of the volume that you just need one loophole or one gap, and that can take you down. So that has changed drastically. We and again, it's a process. I don't want to say that we have already reached. It's a process where everyone every day is learning on security, and everyone's wearing a security hat to protect the entire organization rather than just me and my team.
That's a really important perspective. Thank you for sharing that. And it really does take a village. You also mentioned in your response there about different cybersecurity challenges facing different industries. And today we have viewers in a multitude of different industries that have joined us. But I was hoping you can talk a little bit about some of the specific cybersecurity challenges that you're facing at CWT and perhaps what some of the lessons learned have been from dealing with those.
Yeah, being in the hospitality ecosystem, I think some of the challenges we face are pretty unique. But the challenges which I would say most of the North America or um, I would say US based organization would resonate pretty soundly. The first one is sophistication of the threat actors. Day by day we are seeing the sophistication. Either we call it the recent UAG incident, or we call it the more standard Microsoft incident. The landscape has changed drastically, wherein they're adopting newer technologies. AI could be one, but they are adopting pretty sophisticated threat vectors. They're leveraging supply chain as one of the instrument to demonstrate and have a very long-lasting incident, which could be motivated for financial gains, or in some cases, it could be also relevant to nation state kind of venigance. So that's number one: sophistication of threat actors, which could not be attributed or can be easily covered through a standard security stack. Number two is we would all see recently in the morning we were talking about TikTok and the ban on the Chinese applications, and how the data of the US and the data subjects here could be easily used to influence some of the bigger events, call it the presidential elections, or even a lot of other attributes which could have a national security attached to it. Being an organization where we handle or manage significant PII, there are a lot of motivating factors for us. One could be financial gains. If you look at the trend of recent ransomware events, it is pretty lucrative. It is lucrative because you could always gain access to an organization, and from a resiliency perspective, I'm not saying hospitality is one which is bound, but healthcare or some of the industrial organization do not have a lot of great security practices. They carry a lot of security depth, and that could be one of the biggest challenges for organization is once you go into that kind of ecosystem and disturb it, the consequences could be long lasting. We learned from Colonial Pipeline a few years back, and the same with the UAG incident is the entire healthcare ecosystem is disturbed, where even the patients cannot go, or hospitals cannot process the claims. So having a financial gain or having an event which can disturb the ecosystem is real. So that's another challenge which is very common for our ecosystem. And the last ecosystem which we see is interconnection. Everywhere and every day I get requests from our technology or partners to interconnect. It could be an API connectivity, or it could be a direct connectivity, or a remote connections, or a SD-WAN connection, or so on. That opens up so many data points to an outside parties, vendors, subcontractors, third parties, which opens up your data repository or landscape, moving away from your environment to your vendor's ecosystem. Again, I hate to reference UAG, but it was an acquisition which they did, and that just from the news we are just hearing, that just led to that incident. So that's another trigger, is the data is everywhere, it's moving across everywhere. And lastly, AI is everyone's challenge, as well as a success criteria where everyone wants to leverage AI and API connectivity. uh, all of these cool technologies are really great for the developers and for technology experts, but it also opens up a lot of security gaps and vulnerabilities which cannot be catered, and can be really vulnerable if you do not secure or put right guardrails. So the next $1 million question is, what's the solution? What is CWT doing, or what are the organizations doing to thwart and have a good protection mechanism in place? I think the simplest thing for me and my organization is do the small things right. Rather than having the coolest technology in place, my vision for the organization is whatever technology we have. You can call it the sexiest XDR solution, or you can call it the most sophisticated DLP solution. From my perspective, if we do not have the right implementation of the tools in the environment, we are having a lot of blind spots. So that's the vision for me, is learning is have the best solution in place, but they are only effective if implemented well. So do the small things right, have those solution implemented to have 100% visibility, and then they're giving you the right outputs for your security operations centers, or your governance and response, and your risk compliance team to action, rather than sitting on multiple tools with thousands of alerts, and you're just like, we just don't know what's happening in our ecosystem. So that's some of the small things we're doing to just make sure we constantly refresh and get the best tools, and 100% implementation and visibility.
There's a lot in there, a lot to unpack, certainly. You referenced the TikTok issue, which when we've spoken previously, it really wasn't a thing necessarily yet. But just today, you talk about some of the things that are going on, and it caused me to think about nation state cybersecurity threats. And you and I have talked about this a little bit in the past. How are you navigating that complex landscape at CWT?
Yeah, with full transparency, we operate in a lot of these geographies where it is perceived as a threat. I think the biggest learning for us as an organization is, um, when you operate in those countries or geographies, you have to respect the law of the land. That's number one. A easy and simple example is, we have the best in class encryption technology, but it doesn't operate, or it doesn't work in some of the geographies. Having said that, the way to operate in those countries is isolate. Number one is isolate and treat all of these countries as separate entities or separate network environments, and then have a zero trust kind of implementation between them and the other ecosystem. Without naming the countries, I would just reference as country A and country B. It is almost like treating a different organization, and they would have firewall rules and they would have access control mechanism to treat both of these entities as not trusted. So you know where are the attack vectors coming in, and you protect both the ecosystem according to the law of the land.
Thanks for sharing. That's so interesting and certainly a space to watch very closely. Another one was the PII. You mentioned this earlier as well. And, I was wondering if you can jump in a little more specifically because each one of us individually is potentially affected by identity theft and credential compromise. So, in working with a CWT, how are you dealing with those issues?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem for a B2B or a B2C kind of ecosystem or an e-commerce organization right now is fraud, and fraud attributed to account takeover. You know, the biggest problem we as an individual do is number one, we reuse the passwords. We reuse it to the extent where, I know in the past, one password is my master password, and that can be used in any of the websites. It could be my banking password. It could be my social media password. It could be, password to my retirement, and so on. That practice has led us to, you know, a lot of issues. Number one, if that password is compromised, now I'm opening a gateway to all of my personal as well as professional life. And that is the biggest problem with account takeover is compromised credentials are being used to log in and do fraudulent activities. And it could be as simple as, someone logging into your Wells Fargo account and trying to execute a transaction. Good news, we have multi-factor authentication, but not every retirement or social media or your even corporate accounts have multi-factor authentication, which means now you're opening up an avenue for a threat actor to get into the organization. That's the biggest risk for us, compromised credentials. Once you're in the ecosystem, now it's up to the employee and their access on what they can do, but the damage is already done because now I can sell that credentials into dark web for $10 or $5 or $15. I was just reading up today morning where Roku had a breach a couple of days back where the credentials were sold for 50 cents. Can you believe for 50 cents I can get a credential? And that credential, I can just do a password spray across multiple websites, and I'm just looking for one hit for it. I get a one hit, I'm in. So that's the biggest issue for us is compromised credentials, reusing passwords. We as an organization do a pretty good job on making sure, number one, compromised credentials or credentials are not being reused across multiple avenues. Uh, I can have 16-digit password, I can have 20 digits, I can have 50-digit password, doesn't matter. We need to have a second layer of defense, which could be multi-factor authentication or a role-based access control, or we call it, learning-based ecosystem where suddenly if Rob is doing something which is not, normal, there is a trigger for it. So I think that's couple of compensating controls we are looking at is number one, have a good framework on not reusing your password. Compromised credentials are not allowed. Have multi-factor or some kind of other authentication which helps you secure your Go mine. And the third one is role-based access control. And then lastly, something like a UEBA or machine learning to help you look at anomalies.
That's a really useful framework. No doubt our viewers are taking copious notes on that. And, sort of also caused me to think about something you mentioned earlier in dealing with the board and being looked at as someone to provide risk identification first, and then potentially risk mitigation strategies and counsel. And I'm assuming that you can't do it alone, meaning that there potentially are solution provider partners or companies like that that perhaps help with that type of work that you're doing now. And I'm wondering how you balance the ROI of those investments in external solutions and the efficacy of them as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I kept on being challenged on, hey, prove me the ROI of an X solution or an EDR solution or even the GRC solution. It's a difficult conversation, because number one, um, you have to always assume that you would have an incident, and to secure that incident could be significant. So, every incident would not have a multi-million dollar impact, but still, if I protect against an incident which can bubble it up to, securing multi-million dollars of insurance claims, or even, the company not able to access its resources, that's my ROI. I think the conversation at the board level has shifted drastically. They're not looking at, a quantitative ROI from a solution perspective. What they're looking is more of an assurance based kind of initiative where, tell me, Harshal, what is the assurance you're getting from these tools? ROI can be calculated separately, but what is the assurance? Do you get a good assurance working with the solutions? And can you get a good coverage on detecting? Because the board is learning, they have a duty, sitting on the board as well, to understand cyber. They're asking the right questions on how fast do you detect an incident. That's a $1 million question. And
Mm,
then how fast can you remediate an incident? Because we are not a public company, but we still bound by GDPR or some of the other mandatory requirements from a reporting perspective. But for public companies, Form 8K, you have to disclose it within 4 working days with a material impact to your organization from a cyber perspective. That's a big scenario. So the board is learning, who are sitting on the public boards and coming to us and asking the right questions is, if we have to disclose an incident, what is the framework looking like? So forget about the ROI. Tell me about the framework. Tell me how quickly you can identify, how quickly you can remediate, and what's your visibility looking like. So I think that's how the conversation is tuning up in the last few quarters, is more on the assurance rather than the ROI.
very interesting. Well, I want to shift gears here for a minute. I know at the beginning of our conversation, we mentioned AI. And so it's on everyone's minds. And of course, it's on mine as well. And I wanted to ask you how you're utilizing AI and machine learning in helping define the future of your cybersecurity organization at CWT.
Absolutely. I think, we're all excited on the capabilities of AI from a cyber perspective. The vision for us as an organization from a cyber perspective is automation. Um, and again, the challenges with the current setup is, I do not have unlimited budget from a cyber perspective. I do not have all the skill sets which is required on my SOC team. A lot of, I would say, low hanging fruits are still being driven through manual processes. So these are all perfect use cases for me to leverage AI. And, I can say Charlotte, or I can just say, Microsoft Copilot for security, or hidden layer, or a lot of these technologies give great value for us. But the two objective which we're using for leveraging AI in the cyber organization, one is on the GRC function. I want to automate the hell out of our GRC function, because there are still a lot of things we are doing which are manual. It could be quarterly based compliance assessment. It could be the quarterly assessments which we do for various compliance measures. It could be responding to as simple as the RFP or RFQ documents, as well as having a kind of a chatbot for our internal stakeholders. When someone says, "Are we PCI compliant?" Don't even bother. Have a chatbot respond to them and give a lot of articulative answers, rather than just having someone wait for like 4 hours to respond to them. So that's one on the GRC function. The one which I'm really excited is on the SecOps side, because we have, I would say, the platform with the security tools, call it the CrowdStrike, or the swim lane, or the Salt, to leverage the AI capabilities on automation. And automation could mean different to different people, but for us, the SecOps team is, how can we leverage the AI capabilities to do more of deep threat hunting activities? And in non-technical language, it could be leveraging or using specific skill sets, which is not available with my security operations center, and which can be leveraged within minutes to create results. Simple use cases, if there is a zero-day attack, which has been open, I would just go to the AI and ask a query, and within 30 seconds the results would be, what is the impact to me, which applications I'm talking about, how many of them are external facing, how fast I can remediate it, who are the stakeholders to which I'd have to send across a note, and boom, that is all done within a click. and I don't have to, do a kind of a running across the corridor finding peoples to issue me a report on what is my exposure level, which is a lot of comforting in this ecosystem where talent pool is so shallow, as well as the cost of hiring and maintaining these resources is so heavy.
Yeah, that lots to think about there for sure. Appreciate you sharing all that. Well, we have a few minutes left, and there's really one other category of questions that I know you and I have talked about in the past as well. But as we do our research at the Intelligent Enterprise, it's perhaps growing to be the most important issue that executives seem to be facing, and that has to do with the talent gap, particularly as it relates to AI. Most companies are doing a combination of upskilling and reskilling, and I know that you're working on some innovative things as well. How is CWT tackling that challenge?
Yeah, I would shy away if we say that we had great momentum from a business perspective over the last 4 years. Coming out of COVID, we were not so much. We were impacted significantly with the transactions, and we would not be able to leverage and hire and maintain 30, 40 more resources to protect us against the sophisticated attacks. So from a skills perspective, what we are doing is there is a campaign internally to upgrade the skill sets at the entire organization level. Um, Simplest thing which we do is hey, for my SecOps team, do you learn Python as a language? Do you learn coding as a language? What are you doing from an upskill perspective on learning AI as a capability? The vision for us is not to eradicate any of the cyber jobs, but it is to supplement them so they can do more of an innovative, delivery rather than just doing, the manual stuff. And that hits across, the GRC and the SecOps side, because I'm sure if I can free up their bandwidth by 30%, automating using AI or any of the tools, I can leverage that 30% to do more focused assessments or remediation or governance piece, which we are not doing right now. So that's a big thing we are doing with two ways. One is leveraging automation. The second one is making sure they're skilled right. And I'll give you an example which we did 3 years back. Cloud security was one which was so prominent. We were moving to the cloud after COVID. A lot of our applications were going onto the cloud ecosystem. Our GRC team was not very well focused with the cloud. We got them aligned with the right resources, skilled them on, hey, how do you assess your cloud ecosystem? What is different from an on-prem to a cloud? How do you assess configuration or leverage the compliance tool to give you the right kind of assurance on the cloud platform? And similarly, now cloud is done. We're doing it for AI because that's another aspect. We spoke a lot about AI within cyber, but AI is being leveraged outside of cyber as well for our business as well as a technology focus. How can we make sure we have the right understanding of AI to put the right guardrails for leveraging AI? So I think that's where a lot of upskilling is done to make sure they can ask the right questions and they can put the right governance and technology controls in place to understand what technology or what innovation is in the market right now.
It's such a comforting answer for me to hear. As I said, we do a lot of research in this space, and mature companies and seasoned executives like yourself are approaching it as a concept very similarly, where they're looking to upskill, and it maybe is quelling the fear of some employees internally that might fear that their jobs will be gone. So that's great to hear, and I appreciate you sharing that. I know that you're also doing some innovative things in terms of partnerships and trying to increase the talent density with AI skills on your team. In the few minutes that we have left, I was hoping you could talk about that. And then maybe we can finish up with you sort of reflecting back on your career journey up to this point. And if you had any advice that you would give
Sure.
executives that are, perhaps not at the CISO level just yet, but they're looking to aspire to that type of role in their organization, what career advice would you impart to that group?
Absolutely. I think the biggest partnership which we are doing, and that's something which is close to my heart, is how do we upskill the cyber market or the cyber talent for the future? You know, I'm pretty much close to a lot of universities as well as the advisory roles on bringing top talent from universities across the world, uh, tapping them, at the right stage and mentoring them. Mentoring has to be a big aspect because, a lot of challenges, either we call it, women in cyber, or even, cyber for, armed forces, as well as, for servicemen. I think that's some of the programs we're learning and really doing it as part of my ecosystem, because I have, just to call it out, I have, I would say, 50% of my direct leadership as, women, which is empowering them and giving the right skill sets. One of my direct report comes in from, armed forces. So, I think that is the kind of diversity which we need to, I would say, adopt and encourage to bring in the right kind of leadership and flavor, to challenge each other in this environment, rather than just having a unilateral voice and just sticking to that. I think that's pretty important, and that's the message. We have to be consistent to make sure we are bringing the right people at the universities and encouraging them to take a career in cyber. I know over the last couple of years, CISO roles are under a lot of focus because of some bad marketing, and putting them under, the rigors, I would say, of being, the one who is directly responsible for an incident. But I would say my advice, or someone who's looking for a CISO role, is number one, you need to be passionate about it. If you do not have passion for cyber, this is not the role. I would, again, not shy away from saying it's a tough job. There's a lot of responsibility and a lot of, I would say, dwelling around which you do have to do for success of this role. But there are two things which helps me and has helped me in the success. One is relationship across the environment. You have to build that relationship at the right level, not just with your technology folks, but even with your business and your, especially with your legal counsel. That has to be on your speed dial to understand and percolate the right message across the organization. And number two, I would say, is also on, to be successful as a CISO, you have to be ready to grind yourself and understand the technology things, but you have to speak the right language at the right forums. I cannot go to the board meeting or to the executive meeting and talk about, how great my EDR process is, or how great, my IR response is. They just want to understand a different language, compared to when I go to a technology forum where they just want to understand, tell me what to do. So I think you have to tune up your communication skills and understand what messaging is right for the right audience, and that just goes a long way and helping them to succeed. But one of the thing which, I also feel as a successful CISO, you have to aspire is to help and make sure your technology partners are helping you. I keep on telling this to my direct team is, you would not be successful if the technology or the other application owners are not doing their work. So how can we empathize and be in their shoes? I can give them 50 vulnerability reports and they would be like, what should I do? Help them to prioritize and have the right conversation, so they understand what is critical and what is the priority for the organization, so we are all dwelling or seeking the right, direction to secure the organization.
Well, I think that's great advice. And again, I want to thank you on behalf of the Intelligent Enterprise Leaders Alliance for taking time with us today and answering our questions and sharing all this terrific, terrific advice. Harshal Mehta, I really do appreciate it. Vice President and CISO of CWT. And for those of you that haven't yet joined or followed the Intelligent Enterprise Leaders Alliance page, please do so on LinkedIn for more great content just like this. We look forward to seeing you at one of our events soon. Thanks, Harshal. Take care,
Great.
everyone.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.